Good evening and happy Sunday. In the past 48 hours, me and the bishop have had 4 confirmations all over the state of North Dakota. So we're just in a rare mood tonight. And since I'm in a rare mood, I'm just going to talk about the papacy because that's something I end up talking about a lot generally. Never mind that. So I think that there are 3 very good reasons why every church should have a pope, and it should be recommended for everybody. So, the first good reason to have a pope is to have somebody that can just say no to you. It's actually a very useful thing to have a umpire or a referee who can just decide what's on the other side of in and what's on the other side of out. And I specifically think of the controversy between the Dominicans and the Jesuits in the late 16th and early 17th centuries. They started debating about uh, God's effect on the will with grace and how that relates to our eternal salvation. And it got heated very quickly. The Dominicans were accusing the Jesuits of being Pelagians, and that's obviously very bad. And the Jesuits were accusing the Dominicans of being Protestants, and that's also very bad. So, how did this get resolved? Eventually, the Pope waded into this and basically had meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting, commissions galore, trying to talk the issue to death. And even still, they had not talked the issue to death enough to the point where the Pope basically just said, stop talking about this until we get to the bottom of it. And so, in a sulky silence, the Dominicans and the Jesuits, for the duration of the 17th century, did not publicly dispute these questions anymore. And the Pope said that both at this time are going to be, tolerated as Catholic doctrine, and we're not resolving this issue right now, but we will speak about it in the future. And that answer never came. They never actually got to the bottom of that. So you can still be a Jesuit Molinist, or you could still be a Dominican Thomist. As far as I'm concerned, the Dominicans were correct in that dispute. But it's useful to have somebody to just say no. It's also useful to have somebody just say, you two work this out amongst yourselves. It's useful to have somebody who can say, both of you are right, or neither of you are incorrect enough for this to be a problem. It's useful to have that. So that's the first good reason to have a pope. The second good reason to have a pope is to resolve other sorts of disputes. I think specifically disputes about privileges, disputes about rights between, we'll say, powerful bishops. So let's move away from what the nerds are talking about at the university and look at bishops who are maybe a little too caught up in earthly affairs, or maybe a little too cozy with the local political regime. Having somebody who's, at least in theory, a third party neutral observer in these sorts of disputes is actually an extremely useful thing. Somebody that both can respect, they would be able to maybe simmer the tensions down and keep the church unified, so that an individual bishop who might be maybe a little too big for his britches doesn't lead somebody off into schism. And if you're wondering what kind of use that could have, just look at the Ukrainian Orthodox Church and the Russian Orthodox Church right now. Their countries have gone to war, and it's kind of hard to be in that kind of communion when the other guy's bishop is talking about how great it is that your country's been invaded. That's really not good for ecclesiastical communion. If you had a pope, the pope might be able to rein that sort of thing in. Pope might also not be in a position to be strong enough to actually enforce anything, but the moral authority could be used well. And so that's the second good reason to have a pope, is you've got somebody who can resolve these disputes. It's another useful thing, maybe on a smaller level. Remember reading a response from the dicastery of the worship and sacraments, where these parents were insisting that their child be confirmed or to receive First Communion at a slightly younger age, and the dicastery sided with the parents rather than with the local bishop, because the parents actually knew the law better, and actually were legally backed up, canonically speaking, to have their child receive the sacraments the way they requested. So sometimes, it can prevent a bishop from getting a little too full of themselves. But the third reason, and this third reason is in my mind far and away the most important, the third good reason to have a pope is he symbolizes the unity of your church. So how do you all know that I'm actually a Catholic priest? How do you know that I'm not just a grifter with a collar on? Wouldn't necessarily just be the education. I certainly sound like I know what I'm talking about, but anybody who's willing to spend enough time reading the Catholic Encyclopedia on New Advent could learn how to speak like me. So how do you know that I'm a real priest? Well, the way that you could figure that out is you look at which bishop I'm attached to, which diocese or religious order that I'm attached to. And you'll see that I was ordained by Bishop John Fulda, and he will certify me as a Catholic priest in good standing. And then we just take that one step up. All of a sudden, we've got the Bishop of Fargo being in communion with the Bishop of Rome. He was appointed by the Pope, and he was sent here by him to do the job of the bishop here. And they both would share communion with each other. So back in, I think it was early 2020, before the world blew up, my bishop did his ad limina visit to Rome and got to shake hands with the Pope and check in, with the boys in the Congregation for Bishops and give a report on the diocese. And so the reason you can know that I am actually a real Catholic priest, you can verify my unity with the whole Catholic Church throughout the world, is via communion with the Roman Pontiff. It's a brilliant system. It works well. Everybody can agree. We point at this guy, we're all with him. Now, is this going to be perfect? Is this a system that is going to be without error? No, it's not. It's not going to be without error. Sometimes you're going to have popes who maybe aren't very competent or qualified. Sometimes you're going to have popes with bad intentions. And sometimes, just being human, fallible men, they may have a certain amount of competence and a certain amount of good intentions and still make a bad judgment call. All of those things are possible. There's nothing so perfect on this earth that it cannot be corrupted. However, I think those three reasons that we've talked about, somebody to tell you no when you go outside the lines, somebody to resolve disputes between lower authorities, and most importantly, somebody to be the symbol of unity of the church throughout the world, that's three good reasons why I think every church should have a pope. I will give a warning to you, though. These disputes about papal succession can get nasty really quickly. I think of the 70 years of the Avignon papacy and the Great Western Schism, which fortunately we were able to patch back together. So make sure that whatever process you have for electing, choosing, or imposing a pope is very well thought out, because otherwise this will get nasty very quickly. So go out there and get yourselves a pope. All of you people who aren't Catholic yet and already listen to this. And speaking of pope, here's Pope of Navigating Patterns. How you doing, Mark?
Wow, that was a quick upgrade.
Yeah. I mean, it's a pope of a little YouTube channel. Like I'm not putting you that high up there.
I'll take it. I'll take the honorary. That's great. I haven't had one of those, so no, it's that was great. I like that. I'm glad you brought up the church in Ukraine, although you didn't tell the whole story, but that's okay.
I didn't feel like it was the place to tell the whole story, but if you've got a bee in your bonnet about that, why don't you tell the whole story?
No, I mean, it's all blown up before the they separated from the Russian church.
Mhm.
They did all the paperwork and whatever else they could think of.
They got
And
the blessing of the ecumenical patriarch.
right,
Do so.
they did
Yeah.
what they could in orthodoxy, right?
Mhm.
And the Russian church said, "Yeah, we're not going to recognize the fact that you're splitting from us." It's a weird move. And the Ukraine government said, "We don't believe you. We're going to put in our own people," and they did. And now no one goes to church. Like actually, like wow, just overnight. No one. Biggest feast of the year, oldest church in Kiev. One person, other than the people that run the place.
Wow.
Right. I heard that and I was like, what?
Holy
Excuse me?
mackerel.
And then, not that I didn't believe Father Ignatius when he told me this story, but I did check. Pretty bleak. The biggest feast. The previous year, the church, it was overflowing.
Right, right. Holy mackerel. That's
that church.
It's like that's extremely effective signaling right there to all of the people. This is now a government-run observation, and they all got the signal. That's amazing.
Yeah, it really is.
Like you can't get people to come to the church at the right time for a confirmation. Like that takes a lot of work.
Right, and it's not like that hasn't happened in Catholic land many times.
Sure,
but,
sure, yeah.
I mean, you got the Pope, and he can kind of say no, yes, yes, no, and sometimes he's going to get it wrong because it turns out he's still a person, and it turns out people still aren't perfect for whatever reason. I don't
And
know.
infallibility has an extremely narrow scope.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit there and say that everything Pope Francis does is infallible.
It's a weird misinterpretation. It's always sad when people just totally misunderstand what's going on, and you're just like, I don't know what to tell you. And then you got the example like the Ukrainian church, just a sad story that people just stop going. And like that doesn't kill the church, right? Because you can't, just because people aren't showing up at the building, right? Which is the other thing. You got into it on Twitter with people about Peterson, and I'm like, guys, you're making a lot of assumptions over there. Things you don't have access to know
about what's inside of Peterson's head.
Yeah, and what he may or may not have done. Like, we've got some Orthodox priest was like, he needs to give himself to Christ. And I'm like, how do I know he didn't? How do you know he didn't? I don't know. I haven't. Jesus hasn't shown up and had a conversation with me, so I'm going to assume I don't know.
Yeah,
that's what I'm going to assume.
Okay, so Jesus hasn't showed up and had a conversation with you about Peterson
or anything else.
Okay, all righty.
Well, depending on how you want to parse that, but we're not going to get into. We're not going to get into me waking up this morning before 9 a.m., which is before 8 a.m., which is a small miracle, at least for lately. But
all right, well, we'll take the miracles where we get them.
Let's not delve into visions and all that stuff.
Now, apparently, I'm too good with the memes, and it would be too dangerous to make me the Pope. I don't feel like I've actually tried to make memes before, and it's never gone well. I think they're a little too brainy and only funny inside my head. So I just leave that for other people, the memes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with Ixnon. I mean, Father Eric for Pope for sure. We've been there for a long time. We're just still plotting, Adam and I and others, on how to make that happen. But yeah.
And I'm still working on my Italian.
Work on that Italian.
It's for canon law, for real, guys. For real. I was supposed to come in with a second language already. So, oops. Well, it's kind of understood that prerequisite, you can, take the proficiency exam a year or two into the program for the prerequisite.
Yeah, whatever works.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sally will make the memes for you. So
Sally will make the memes.
It'll be fine.
Pope Leo's mean meme machine.
How does that work with the Pope names, right? They change their names when they be Pope, and then...
Yeah, you just pick one that you like.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
You pick whatever one you want, whatever line of popery.
Yeah, so you could be like, John Paul I and decide, hey, I'm going to be the first one with a compound name. or you could be like Benedict XVI was like, all these other Benedicts, I want to be associated with them. You could be like Urban. I don't know why you'd name yourself that, or Hilarious, Pope Hilarious.
There's a Pope Hilarious?
I mean, sometimes it's translated Hillary, but in Latin, it's hilarious.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it would be.
Yeah.
What little Latin I failed.
Yeah. I need Italian, though. I need to have a modern language, and Latin is definitely not modern. Andrew's going to be Pope Bartholomew, so it means he hopes he gets his flayed alive for his martyrdom.
Yeah.
That's right. I'm wise enough to stay off Twitter.
He's not wise enough. He's wise enough to prevent himself from getting on Twitter, which is a different statement entirely.
That's a certain form of wisdom, and I will take it.
It's a better form of wisdom, right? We've had this conversation. We know Father Eric's weakness. He's got the world's smallest and dumbest phone for a reason. It's a beautiful thing.
It's not the dumbest phone. It could do directions and podcasts.
I heard a rumor. I haven't been able to confirm it that you can actually make phone calls with this. I mean, have you heard that? I don't.
So when we actually had a phone conversation last summer, did you do that from a landline or?
Oh no, it's just one of those things. Last summer,
yeah.
That wasn't the last time we talked on the phone. Not even close.
Oh yeah, no, I was calling you to do the tech when I wake up and my internet here in Fargo doesn't work. Just, oh man, it's the worst. All righty. We've got Justin Brierley with Tom Holland.
No,
I have not heard that. Corey, you'd better come on here and tell us why that's significant. I actually, Bishop and I were in the car a lot this weekend, and he was commenting on some of Richard Dawkins' recent comments about cultural Christianity and all that. And
that was amazing.
Yeah, well,
what?
Yep.
Excuse me, Mr. Dawkins, first of all, define your terms, sir. Second of all, wait, what? Isn't this a reversal of your previous position?
Yeah. He didn't say he was a Christian. He just said he was culturally a Christian.
No, he said, I'm not a religious Christian. I'm a cultural Christian. And I was just like, what the heck are you even saying? Could you use English, please? What is this?
Yeah, those aren't very clear qualities. But anyway, I told my bishop that I think Dr. Holland's book actually had an awful lot to do with Dawkins saying that he's really like, he was kind of like the tip of the spear on a certain flavor of English, not quite Christianity.
He's given them cover, unfortunately. So it's like,
sure.
It's a plus and a minus.
Yeah, but him naming these things, I don't know. I think it's better that you name these things and to leave it unnamed, at least in this particular.
No, I think it's good overall that he made the case. I just think you're holding back an awful unstoppable force there, buddy. Mm-hmm. I like the wall you put up. I'm gonna love watching it fall down. It's gonna be beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, I did hear this one. Yeah.
Tell me about
apparently
this.
Tom Holland had cancer. And this was like back in like 2020. And he was in a shrine of Our Lady, the Blessed Virgin Mary, in England, because, they used to have those. It wasn't actually, so it had been in the Middle Ages, a shrine where Our Lady had appeared to people. But then King Henry VIII, that monster, and we'll never forget that, tore the place down and got rid of the statues. But, he's a historian. He still knows about these things. And when he got there, he said a prayer to the Blessed Virgin Mary, and his cancer went into remission very shortly afterwards.
Huh.
Yeah. So anyway, just in case you think miracles just fix people, they don't. Miracles are complicated. People don't know what to do with them.
No, they don't. That's true. That is true. It's a tough thing. I saw Peterson on Chris Williamson too. That's going to be an interesting talk.
Corey, you have a baby in your lap.
There is one of those.
Speaking of
How are you guys doing?
Doing all right. Doing all right.
Better now that you're here with your child, or one of your child's.
Yes, the other two are probably causing trouble for their mother right now, huh?
They're floating around. You know, Evelyn, every time she recognizes your voice now. Whenever you come up on something, she's like, "Is that Father Eric?"
You guys are back from Wisconsin.
Yeah, that's right. I'm here because you got me all excited to talk about Mary.
Let's talk about Our Lady then, because you were in Wisconsin. That's the location of the only approved Marian apparition of the United States.
Among other things, yeah. That interview, I posted the link in the chat. Highly recommend. Just for that part where
links don't show up in the chat.
I can get it to show up.
I put it on the YouTube. All right, I can. Yeah.
YouTube
filters that out
automatically. Links in, I think
that's weird.
Blocks them or something.
Anyway, highly recommend once you find the link. I was not holding out on Twitter. Kale Zeldin just posted the short link on Tom Holland talking about his little experience, and we listened to that a couple days ago. And he gave that interview apparently in a Protestant church, like is where the interview was going on. And you could just feel the atmosphere there. Everyone was just going, not sure what to make of that. Like, yay, Tom Holland having a Christian mystical experience, but Mary, what? We got very excited because she played a massive part in our conversion.
This one right here, right?
That looks right.
Yeah. Okay. Y'all can go find it. It was only posted 8 days ago. Brierley, Brierley. It's a horrible name to spell. It's too many awful consonants in a row. But never mind that. He's a nice guy.
He's a great guy. No, his podcast is amazing. I can't wait to see his book. Although I'm sure if you listen to his podcast, you won't get anything new from his book. But
yeah, you can get books signed, and you can't get podcasts signed.
It's true, and they can just randomly decide to stop streaming the podcast, and they don't want you to listen to it anymore. Yeah. But so here's the thing: in Wisconsin, we didn't even. So we visited there because we're thinking about moving there. We pretty much. Well, spoiler alert: I think Our Lady showed us that we are actually going to move there.
All right.
Wow. We did not know. We did know that Champion was there. So Our Lady of Champion, for those who don't know, was the one church-approved apparition of Mary in the United States. I don't know if it's. I was maybe you know this because we were wondering because there's Our Lady of Guadalupe. Aside from those two, are those the only two in North America?
There might be one up in Canada. I'm not sure though. That would be a research question.
I'm sure Google knows.
Yeah.
So in Wisconsin, though, they've got Champion, which is up near Green Bay in the northeastern part of the state. And then they've got in La Crosse on the western edge of the state, the Shrine to Our Lady of Guadalupe, which is incredible. Absolutely, possibly my favorite church that I've been in.
It's an excellent church. You know who got that shrine going?
Sure,
Cardinal Burke, who I emceed on Tuesday.
Did you really?
Yeah, I got to MC a mass for a cardinal, which for those of you who don't know, that means I got to tell a cardinal what to do. Because once he came up into the sanctuary, he was in my domain.
Nice.
Well,
it's
he was
also
in
one of
good
those
hands.
weird dichotomies of leadership where if you put somebody in charge of something, then like in the moment, you kind of just have to let them do it.
Yep.
So even though he's, a stinking prince of the church and I'm just, 3 years ordained, because I got put in charge, I was in charge.
Leadership doesn't work the way people think.
Yeah.
Emma, it's in La Crosse. So if you go to Dubuque, it's like 3-ish hours north of there, I think. Or no, not even. How long of a drive was it? It was a couple hours north of Butte. It's on the Mississippi River. But yeah, so Cardinal Burke, cool dude. He gave the mass at the walking pilgrimage that Ted and I went to, which is where this whole thing kind of started for me. Turns out they're trying to make a American version of the Camino in Wisconsin because there's so much cool stuff up there, so many cool holy sites. There's already a walking pilgrimage between Champion and Holy Hill, which is another beautiful old church in the southeast of Wisconsin. Apparently, they're talking about connecting that further on all the way across to La Crosse, which some people have already done the walk, but there's hope that it'll come with infrastructure at some point across the wild, empty forests of Wisconsin and be the American Camino, which I would be on board with. You just need a couple of houses of hospitality, maybe a few more monasteries along the way. Also, by the way, amazing monasteries in Wisconsin and nearby Wisconsin. Just a big fan of the Midwest.
Yeah.
When we were going up to the Shrine of Our Lady, it's funny because they have I don't want to spoil it for anybody. It's on a beautiful piece of land, like on a hill. It's kind of hidden in the forest. You go up to the visitor center and there's like a beautiful little church building up behind it, nestled in the hill. We were showing up for mass and we showed up 15 minutes early. Like, oh, okay, we got time. We'll take the kids to go to the bathroom. We'll go to the visitor center. We'll walk up to that little chapel and we'll be fine. Turns out that little chapel is not the shrine. It was a little votive candle chapel. So it took 5 minutes to walk up there. And then we were like, oh, we gotta keep walking. It was something like a half-mile walk. Uphill through this winding switchback, beautiful forest trail. And just the way that it happened for us, we were like, the shrine came into view as the bells were ringing, and I just kind of melted. And we were already kind of being very prayerful to try to figure out, if God was going to show us that this is where we were supposed to live. Our Lady turned up.
Nice.
Like she seems to have a way of doing. She's kind of like the last domino that brought me out of Protestantism into Catholicism. So all of that, I got also very excited then when on the same drive, we heard this interview with Tom Holland. And I would just have loved to have been in that room full of Protestants. Like, it was a Protestant church where the interview was. They had no clue what to make of it. And they even said, like, if the head of this church is listening right now, he's going to have an eyebrow raised. Like,
what? It was Assemblies of God, which is, I'm not an expert on this, but I think it's like the lowest of the low church Protestants.
Yeah.
Like very flat hierarchy and somehow also an international organization. I don't know how they managed that.
5 stars for the interview. Also 5 stars for the sensed awkwardness in the room afterwards. It was awesome.
Yeah. Oh my, what fun. Well, hey, as long as you don't become a cheesehead, I think we'll be cool.
I mean, I like the colors. They're all right.
But if you're in La
Some
Crosse,
green
you're going
and
to be
yellow.
closer to Minneapolis than you would be to Green Bay.
I don't know. I feel like the Green Bay poll is pretty strong. I also shout out to our buddy Elijah, who I think you also know in Bridges of Meaning. We met up with him while we were in Green Bay as well. Yeah, he's in an interesting place as well in terms of these questions. But yeah, we'll see. I don't know. We were talking. There's a lot of football. There's a lot of football in the Midwest. I didn't grow up with that. So we might have
I'm excited about the
some
possibility of this Wisconsin Camino because that'll give people a pilgrimage in Wisconsin that isn't to Green Bay.
We'll get you part of the way over to your team. It's like, what are you, a Twins fan or something?
It's not even the same sport. I watch sports religiously, though. Like once or twice a year when something important is happening.
I think you made that joke before.
I love that joke.
Second time.
Yeah, it's especially at like a wedding dinner with somebody. Somebody who maybe doesn't spend a whole lot of time with priests. It usually gets a pretty good laugh there, and then maybe a little bit of an embarrassed blushing when they realize I'm right. Oh
Nice.
my!
Any of these monasteries near villages in Wisconsin?
I mean, they all have communities nearby them. I think so. Let's see. Dubuque was fantastic. There's 2 Trappist monasteries there. One with Our Lady of Mississippi with nuns, and then New Melray with monks. Very beautiful. I like the city. La Crosse, I don't think they have a religious order that's associated
There's
with the university or
Franciscans.
something, but they're
At least when I was when I visited there, this is like almost a decade ago. At the shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe, the Franciscans were taking care of it.
That might still be the case, but
So
I don't think they have like a. They're specifically there for taking care of the shrine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's kind of like a monastery.
yeah. And then I think my favorite one though was the Eastern Monastery in St. Nazianz. Can't get me out of it. I'm a sucker for the Eastern liturgies.
Right?
Yep.
All right,
They
we'll
are.
take it. It's a big church. There's room enough for everybody as long as we all agree on the Pope, right?
That's why he's so handy.
That's why it's so
cold up
handy to
there
have a
for you.
Pope.
Too cold.
Oh, it's the perfect amount of cold. We came back to Corpus Christi and we're like, you'd think with a name like Corpus Christi, they'd have better churches here. But
Hi.
Yeah.
Hey, kiddo. Hello.
I was waving at the baby, Emma. Nothing
I
personal.
know. No,
Okay.
that's fair. I was also waving at the baby.
it's
Yeah.
Father Eric. Can you say hi?
Hi. Let her know that I'm saying hi, Corey.
He's saying hi, but you can't hear him.
Oh my! What do you think of all this Wisconsin business, Emma?
I think anything that makes people move closer to me is excellent.
Nice. Yeah, Wisconsin's not that far from North Dakota. I just have to get across all of Minnesota.
You just have to get across all of Minnesota, and that's kind of a lot, actually.
It depends on what part of Wisconsin I'm going to, though. Like, if it's if I want to get to like Superior and
This
that's
is the
just
western side.
it ends up being about
So
5
pretty much
hours.
all you have to do is cross Minnesota, and then you're basically there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
depending
Corey's house
depending
is
on
what I'm
which.
hearing.
That's the hope, just a couple more years when we have a house. Hopefully not more than a couple.
Mm-hmm.
But depending on which way the wind is blowing, it might make your drive even longer, I discovered.
Oh
It
yeah.
can get that windy.
It's pretty windy. I like La Crosse because there's a bit of terrain. There's like
Yeah.
some neat valleys and some neat bluffs that you can, it's not as windy.
I know a couple priests in La Crosse, maybe only just one. He's a good guy though, so maybe he'll make up for all of it.
Where's he at? We went to mass at
Oh gosh, I
St.
don't know.
Joseph's
I know it's a
Cathedral
diocese
and-
of La Crosse. Diocese of La Crosse. Yeah, that's his,
Oh, not necessarily in La Crosse proper.
no.
There's a lot of neat Catholic stuff in that region. Like Rochester is right next door where Bishop Barron is, and Father Mike is somewhere nearby. And there's a whole bunch of Word on Fire writers just like right there
Yeah.
in the area.
Yeah,
I'd enjoy working for Word on Fire.
I would too.
One of my 3 long-term plans.
I might be a little too chippy with the good bishop though. I get chippy enough with my own.
All right, I think I've got to move on, but I want to hear all y'all's opinions, reactions on the Tom Holland invoking the Blessed Virgin in a room full of Protestants who are really excited and wanted him to be Christian, but didn't know what to make of this Mary thing. But I'll see you guys later.
See you later, Corey.
See
Tend
you.
to your
Good to see you.
children.
That will be interesting.
Yeah. It's
Every time,
weird, right? When you mention Mary or symbolism or any of the things the Protestants don't like, their reaction is always very strange. And it's very, very off. It's just like, what? There's goodness here. Why are you making it not good? I don't understand.
Yeah.
yeah. Every time I hear Tom Holland, I get confused for a minute before I remember that there's a Tom Holland that's not Spider-Man.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
I had to say that to my bishop. Actually, I don't know if I had to say it, but I did say it. It's like Tom Holland, not Spider-Man. Speaking of not
Not
Spider-Man,
Spider-Man.
hello, Casey.
I am Spider-Man. How'd you know?
Oh, well, for Pete's sake, we've got a celebrity here on the stream.
Oh, I'm Spider-Man. He smokes a pipe now, and he's elderly.
Spider Casey.
Spider Casey. That's great.
Well, I mean, he does go by Spider-Man, despite being Spider-Boy in many iterations.
True.
Spider young adult. There we go.
Spider YA.
Spider
Spider
YA.
Team.
Yeah, it doesn't really work.
Sorry, derailed.
No. There's no rail here. It's the open mic. It's open.
This is the third rail the whole time.
I don't have a set prepared, so we're gonna have to improv.
Okay. Well, what do you think of Our Lady?
She's great. I recommend praying to her. Yeah, that's mostly what I have to say.
All right. Oh, he's got his rosary right there.
I have this one.
Nice.
Ooh, that's
This is a good one. This is a good one.
Oh,
This one's got
wow.
all kinds of medals and stuff on it.
Is that a Metropolitan cross?
Is it? You would know more than me.
No, it's just got a bunch of medals on it.
It's
Okay,
just got
that's
metal
cool, too.
stuck to the cross. That's cool.
I think the
Mhm.
Metropolitan cross would be a great addition to any rosary because it's super Eastern, and
Mhm.
most of like the best kind of Orthodox people would be like, "That's cool," and then there would be a small set of the worst kind of Orthodox people who'd lose their minds over it, and you'd be able to filter them very quickly.
You need a good quick filter.
I told
I'm
my friend who's
actually-
Orthodox that like these are the sorts of things that monks get in fistfights over, and they're not for like normal people.
Right.
Sorry, Emma.
Metropolitan cross is not
Oh, you're-
necessarily Eastern Orthodox. I think it's a general Christian symbol that, let's say, Catholics could be attached to as well. It's the one where the bar. I'm gonna get a picture of it. Let's just get a picture. That'll be much.
It's got the
simpler.
like extra little bar along the bottom.
Yeah, an extra crossy cross.
I don't know what it has to do with cities, though.
I don't know. I'm very proud of myself because I'm in the middle of my most successful rosary novena ever, which is really my most
Is it
successful
the-
novena ever because I
it
tend
the
to burn
90-day
out
one?
around day. No, it's just a 9-day one.
Oh, okay.
I'm just saying the rosary every day for 9 days leading up to this big test I have coming. But I usually burn out around day 4 or 5, and I'm on at least day 6. So
Oh, well done.
All right,
I'm
I
proud of
finally have one that I like. So that right there, kids, is a Metropolitan cross. So
Oh.
usually the most distinctive thing you're going to have on there is that bar down there is kind of crooked.
Oh. It's
With
also
the-
got the little.
This is a very ornate one. It's the
Silver.
bar that's the real the
Yeah.
real distinctive part of it. This is like an icon, so they've added the Holy Face of Jesus, Our Lady, St. John,
Well-
and the Skull of Adam. They've added all of that to that, but this bar is really the.
Yeah. I find it interesting because Civ uses the like little loopy things on the ends to signify Eastern Orthodoxy. Like that's their Eastern Orthodox cross. And I'm always interested in whether Civ has gotten anything right or not.
Civilization, you mean the video game by Sid Meier?
Yeah. Civ 6 specifically. That's the only one I've played. Because I only got into it like 5 years ago.
It would have been hard for you to have gotten into Civilization 1 when it came out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would have been
Was
hard
it
for me
hard?
too. I would have been quite young.
When did the first Civ game come out?
Mark?
No idea.
Okay.
Not a gamer.
Yeah. Frankly,
It's
you're not
old.
missing that much.
I know it's old, but I don't.
Was it in DOS times or was it?
91. I was not
1991.
born yet.
Yeah.
Okay, I would have had a hard time playing it when it came out too.
That's pretty old. 91. That's back there.
Apparently, Civ 3 was Corey's first.
Mine too.
Never forget your first, Corey.
Oh, for Pete's sake.
Your first of anything. It's totally true.
I suppose I won't forget my first mass with a cardinal. No, this wasn't my first mass with a cardinal, though.
Oh, see, you forgot it.
I didn't forget the first one for long.
You forgot.
You don't forget your first car. You know, there's a
No,
bunch
no.
of firsts you don't forget.
Yeah, I suppose.
I miss my first car.
I don't miss my first car. It was getting kind of beat up near the end. It was a Toyota Camry. So, you know, it was about middle-aged when I let it go at 215,000 miles.
That's it?
Oh man, it's brand new.
Yeah. But I wanted something that got me higher above the snowbanks. It's a real consideration. I hope Corey is still listening and knows
He's
that
not
when
prepared. He does not know what he's getting into.
Oh, yeah.
because
he's gonna have a good time.
Wisconsin gets pretty good qualities of snow. I reckon La Crosse gets more snow than Fargo does. Fargo definitely gets colder, but La Crosse almost certainly gets more snow.
Yeah, but the temperature swings in the
We
Midwest.
actually
are
don't get
insane.
that much snow down here. It's kind of sad. It just gets cold.
His dad got his Camry over 500,000 miles. Yeah.
There we go.
Like I would have kept on driving that car if I was able to get above the snow. Because other than that, it had everything. No, I would have upgraded the infotainment system. I didn't really have the money for it when I was in seminary, but I would have put an aftermarket stereo in there. Yeah.
Nice subwoofer. They would have appreciated that at seminary.
No, not the subwoofer. I would just want the option of connecting Bluetooth.
Wait, so
I also would like the option to connect Bluetooth.
when you get a used car, you don't immediately put an aftermarket stereo in it? Is that even a thing you can do?
Yeah, you can keep the production stereo in there for the life of the car if you so choose.
Why would you even get a car if you weren't immediately going to replace the factory radio? You're not even making any sense.
Okay, alrighty.
You know,
Plus
you
they're
can
cheap.
get a Bluetooth thing that plugs into the aux port and lets you Bluetooth connect your phone.
I
Yeah.
once swapped a radio in a
The
car
stereo
while
that's
driving
already
down the
in
road.
there.
Mark, I don't need to hear
That's
these stories.
terrifying, Mark.
It was awesome.
Mark, you
Everyone's like,
complain
"What are
about
you
10
doing?"
stories?
I'm like, "It'll be fine. I do this a lot," and I just kind of swapped the radio. And they're like, "What the hell? I have my music, man." It was funny. Downtown Boston too. Traffic, the whole 9 yards.
No.
Nothing could stop me.
You know what? That actually makes more sense. I would believe that a significant number of the drivers in Boston are doing things like that.
Nothing. Yes, they are.
Just judging by driving in Boston.
I heard an insight recently about the traffic in Washington, D.C., that it's deliberately bad so that it's harder to get at the president.
No.
What an interesting theory.
No.
That's what somebody I'm not tied to this theory, but it was
The
like
streets might be set up that way, but nothing explains me being in a line of 3 cars on a 2-lane thing in a, going out onto a main road from a plaza and somebody coming out from behind me, passing all 3 cars and then banging a right from the oncoming traffic lane to get in front of everybody at a stop sign. Like, I've never seen anything like that before. I've driven through New York City. I've driven in California. I've driven in Boston. Like, I've never seen or even heard anything like that before. I didn't think anybody was going to beat New York City. My first time in New York City, when I got off the highway, somebody literally, there was no traffic. Really? I mean, there was a little bit, but it wasn't rush hour or anything. Somebody went up on the sidewalk on 2 wheels and drove. And I was like, all right, I'm never driving to New York City again. Of course I did, but nope, this beat that, like, hands down. I'm like, oh, I've never seen that. That was, and on my way down to DC, I went through 6 miles of New York City, and I thought it was a war zone. And then I got to DC and I'm like, get me back to New York City. That driving's real safe compared to this nonsense. This is bonkers.
I'm not taking my car back to DC. I'm just going to fly out there and take the metro and hope that the city doesn't burn down while I'm in it.
Good choice.
If I visit you, I am not taking the car, not into the city. I might take it close to the city, but there's no freaking way I'm taking any kind of car of anybody's anywhere near that place again.
That's fair.
It's just wild.
I am sad because we're exactly at the halfway point between Fargo and DC.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you?
Yeah, by Google Maps.
I wouldn't have thought that, but that's the wrong way for me. I know the north-south, not the east-west.
Yeah, it's 10 hours and then 10 hours.
Yeah, yeah.
What a drive.
I did it last year all by myself. Listen to the Lord of
Yeah.
Spirits podcast. It was all right.
I wouldn't necessarily wish that on you anyway, though.
I kind of like
It's
driving.
a lot of driving.
But
Oh,
kind
no,
of
that's
the
the
last
great
2
drive.
hours of when you get to hour 18, you're kind of ready to be done. No, the real crazy drive was when me and my dad moved our brother-in-law from Las Vegas to Fargo.
Oh boy.
And so we drove his pickup out to Las Vegas, packed my brother-in-law up, and then drove it right back. And
Oh,
that
man.
was miserable.
That sounds brutal.
Yeah. My dad
Yeah,
was able
when
to
I
get
was-
like a whole retreat written while I was driving.
When I was a kid, every summer we would drive from Michigan to Massachusetts and then stay with my Nana for like a month and then drive back. And that's like a 14-ish hour drive. And now my husband is like, I don't want to drive that long. We got to find somewhere to stop in the middle. And I'm like, what is this?
14's right on the border, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a long day right there.
We'd start at like 3 a.m. so that all us kids would be asleep for the first like 4 hours of it. And
That's a
so
good
they didn't have
strategy.
to worry about keeping, 12 to 3-year-olds entertained.
Yeah, we when we lived in South Carolina, our folks eventually bought a van that it was like a conversion van, so they took in a Ford Econoline and like spruced up the interior, including a TV and VCR. It was so cool. Like we could just watch movies, and it was like the TV was like mounted on the roof. It was the best.
That's cool.
We could just do road trips like that. Like the amount of fighting just plummeted because we could just sit there and watch one of our favorite movies.
That's great. I would do Massachusetts, in one day again, if I could leave early enough. Just getting up early has just been a struggle. Maybe tomorrow I'll get up early again, or early-ish for me again. It'll be wonderful.
Ask Our Lady's intercession, Our Lady of Waking Up. We'll make a new icon for it.
Yes, make
Our
a note.
Lady of the Dawn.
I got to get.
that-
Yeah, I was a
That's a
little
good name.
disappointed about St. Michael's Shrine. I didn't quite do it. Although maybe this is the fruits of that. Who knows? So
Yeah, I don't know. I've never blessed anybody with angel oil before, so
your healing game is not. You need to
it's
boost that up.
Angel oil?
they
Yeah,
had
yeah.
angel oil in Florida.
Yep.
Is it made from angels?
No, I'm pretty sure it's just made
Crushed.
from olives.
They crush the angels. They squeeze the oil right out of them. Yes.
That's really hard for like a non-physical being to be able to make oil out of them.
It
No,
was
they
this-
give you that at the shrine. The
the
woman.
St. Michael Shrine has this healing oil, which is like, shouldn't it be St. Raphael if it's healing oil? It was a nice shrine. The babushka there was lovely,
It was a beautiful shrine.
Yeah, I was very happy to go there, but I didn't get it.
I loved it because it had swords. Any shrine with swords. Yes.
Do you get to use them, or the decoration? Or
The whole
Right.
point is that they put the swords up on the wall.
okay,
Yeah, where they're not being used.
I didn't need the swords. I was there for healing. Thank you very much. But if I needed one, I would have grabbed one.
they don't like if the bishop or a pope comes or something, they take the swords off and like bless you with it or something.
Maybe they weren't Knights of Columbus swords. I can tell you that.
Oh yeah, there was a posting in the bulletin this week about joining the Knights of Columbus, and I'm thinking about it.
Do it. You're
Yeah,
cool.
do it.
It's like instant friends.
It's true. I was I was gonna start a men's club at the me and one of the associate pastors. We're gonna try to start a men's club, but it's like we do have the Knights of Columbus, but a men's club would also work too.
Yep, do both.
Knights of Columbus, there's not as much going on as like a weekly men's club, I would assume.
It depends on the council. Some councils are kind of dead, and what they need is somebody to take leadership and start doing stuff.
Good one, Casey. Well, but also you have to be in the club to get in that club, and you want
That's
something
true.
that draws people.
I am in the club to be able to get into the club, Knights of Columbus.
Yeah,
is
you're
just
already in the club to get in
man.
the club. You're
Although,
good.
do you have to be married to be in the Knights of Columbus? No,
I don't think
I
so.
didn't know.
I have a friend who's in Knights of Columbus who's not married.
Okay.
My brother is very much a bachelor, and he is the financial secretary for his Knights of Columbus. So,
Okay, I didn't know. I'm just asking.
Oh, is this the one I met?
no. This is Steve.
Steve. Okay, I've met Steve yet.
Yeah, you haven't
Makes
met
sense.
Steve. Yeah, he is very much a bachelor.
Father Eric
What
has
was
the
I-
same problem with brothers that I have with sisters, where we each have like 3 of them, but it's awkward to differentiate. So you just say my brother or my sister, and then everyone thinks it's just one person who does a ton of stuff.
Okay, so you've got systems administration brother, you've got musician brother, and you've got baggage handler brother. The one who's in the Knights of Columbus is baggage handler brother.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Oh, I was going to ask a real question.
Say
Then.
that right to his face, Almond Tree, just to let you know.
Can I ask a real question now?
Please.
All right. I want to visit. I'm going to visit a couple monasteries this year, I think, and I'm trying to find a Carmelite monastery. But I don't. How many are there in the U.S.? Because I can't find any really. I haven't looked super hard, but I want to visit the Carmelites.
I think you said there was one in Boston.
Are they Carmelites?
The ones that I know about are the ones in Minnesota. Are you talking about Carmelite men?
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
obviously.
Okay, and the ones in Wyoming. The ones in Wyoming are super hardcore, and I think they're awesome. I think they actually still do the tonsure, right? That's how hardcore they are. And they make the coffee. The ones in Wyoming.
Oh yeah.
So they're those are the 2 that I know about.
Okay.
We have Carmelite sisters in my diocese.
Oh yeah, Carmelite sisters are everywhere.
Yeah,
There's not too many of the monks though.
yeah. I was in seminary with one of the Carmelite fathers from the Minnesota monastery, and he seemed like he was just going to fit right in there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, hardcore Carmelites. These guys, this order in Wyoming is everything's in Latin extraordinary form, and they don't take applicants under 30 or over 30. I mean, they don't take applicants over 30. So I'm really not sure how old you are, Casey, but if you're inquiring seriously, the ones in Wyoming might not be interested because they don't have any trouble finding young men to join their monastery because they're hardcore. That's what young men want, right? Like,
That's not surprising.
Look at Andrew here. He's a young man, and he wants things that go hard. Basically, that's all there is to it. And yes, there are women's branches of the Carmelite order. So, but no, the Carmelites were started by Saint Simon Stock, unless you mean Our Lady, in which case, yes, the Carmelites were started.
Our Lady of Mount Carmel, yes.
Our Lady of Mount Carmel. So it depends on what level of agency you're interpreting at there.
If you want to get, extra, actually, you could point to Elijah, but,
That's a very, very distant founding right there from when they actually got together and started doing things. Yeah. So good luck on your Carmelite search. I've told you everything I know.
Okay.
Carmelite search. That's what we need. We need Catholic search, the search engine for the next billion years.
Yeah, I think that was called Magisterium AI. It wasn't very good.
The AI thing is not very good.
Magisterium AI.
I can't remember what it was called. They just trained a large language model on a bunch of church documents, and
that would not work.
Yeah. I was not all that terribly impressed. I'm just going to keep on using Perplexity to find what I'm looking for. Perplexity is nice because it cites its sources, and usually I just want to find whatever the source is.
Yeah.
So I was looking for an article a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, I remember what this article's about. I can't find it, and it found it for me.
We could build that. It's not actually all that hard to do correctly, but
it's already out there, so I don't need you to build it.
No, you don't understand. If you do it right, it does cool stuff.
Okay.
When I had mine working 2 days ago before it blew itself up magically, I was like, oh, this is not bad. Like, it did some good stuff. The problem is you got to feed it good data, and that is hard to do. Fortunately, I keep notes in computer form already from years of dealing with data science. But yeah, you got to format things correctly. And
I have to say, every once in a while, Mark, I'll see something that you posted 10 years ago on Facebook, and it's like, man, this guy's consistent. He hasn't changed a lick in 10 years.
Nope. I know. I did another one today. I'm like, look at these old Facebook posts from 10 and 12 years ago. My goodness. Wasn't I onto something?
My Facebook posts from 10 years ago are nothing but cringe. I'd like, stop showing me these Facebook. I want to forget.
That's funny.
Oh, man. Dude, there was a Carmelite monastery in Wisconsin.
There you go.
That's not even that far from you.
Yeah.
If I remember where you live.
Ohio.
Yeah. No wonder where you want to leave. You know, Ohio's got more astronauts than any other state in the union.
They all want to leave.
About that state that
more
makes people want to
too.
leave the whole planet.
More presidents too. They just want any job that'll get you out of the state.
Out of the state. Yeah.
I'll remain silent on your slander, but I will simply just pray for your conversion.
Okay. All right. I'll take
Where in Ohio?
This is a good trade.
You can't visit because they're super close. What good is that? The monastery should be part of the village, damn it. These people are doing it wrong.
North Central Ohio, if you know where Cedar Point is.
Area. Yep. I've been to Cedar Point.
So I don't know if I want to dox him, although I guess it doesn't really matter because he's a priest. But the associate pastor that I'm friends with at our parish. So you know the Coming Home Network?
Yes.
His dad was the founder of the Coming Home Network.
Oh, wow. That's like B-list Catholic celebrity right there.
It is B-list. So I'm twice removed from B-list Catholic celebrities. So there you go. That's your fact of the day.
Coming Home Network's great, but it's not like, that's going to be a household name.
It's not EWTN.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's great. I didn't know he had a kid that was a priest.
He's got one that's a priest and one that runs it now, I think, right? Because he retired.
Yeah. I was in seminary with Scott Hahn's son. He didn't have that epic baritone voice, unfortunately.
Dang.
So he didn't inherit everything, but he got his dad's intellect. So that's pretty cool. But it didn't come with that extremely articulate baritone voice that he always speaks with, So anyway, yeah, B-list Catholic celebrities.
Is that going in the title?
It might. We'll see what makes the cut.
I don't have anything else to add in that regard, but it's a factoid. There you go.
Factoid. A little. Factoid actually just means fact-like, but it's not actually true.
Oh, well, then it is a fact.
Yeah. But
it is a small fact. A factolite.
A factolite. That's a much better term for it. A factolite.
I'm all in on factolite.
Oh, my.
Totally using that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, my.
You say fractal, we say factolite.
Factolite, yeah. Oh.
Do you hear that clip? Pageau put out a clip, and he was talking to this guy Peterson, I think is his name, and it was like a 18-minute clip from his conversation, but it was fantastic. I mean, some of the stuff these people talk about is just amazing, and I think, there's that. There's all this stuff. Peterson talked to Chris Williamson, right? There's all this stuff coming out now, and it's really sort of coalescing, such that even the likes of Dawkins is making up new terminology to talk about the stuff that he couldn't account for. So I think it's a really good sign, like overall, with all these clips and all these, they're not revealing moments, is what I'll call them, right? All these revealing moments where people,
Are you going to call them apocalyptic moments?
I can't use that language.
Okay.
Sounds too Christian to me. I don't really understand apocalyptic in that. The secular version of apocalyptic is like the end. It's equivalent to nihilism, which of course it's not. So
okay. I just love explaining, Trump, Trump, that was an apocalyptic moment when he came down the escalator, and it's like, 100% it was, but depending on who you are, that means something very different.
Right.
It was apocalyptic. A lot was revealed in that. But it wasn't. So far, the world hasn't ended, at least not the way people expect it to.
Oh, I think the world ended in 2014, and we're sort of catching up to. I got to do a video on that. I got a bunch of stuff that happened in 2014 that I was like, "Oh no, that happened in 2014 too." You didn't put it. I put some of it together, but like, it wasn't really until 2016 that I was like, 2014 was a big difference. Like that was a real pivot on a bunch of fronts that no one saw.
I've heard
coming.
people say the world ended in 2016.
No, that's when they noticed. It was 2014. The weird things that happened in 2014 are just like mind-blowing.
2014, the year the world ended.
What happened in 2014?
Here we go. Regale us, Mark. I'm here for it.
So, just off the top of my head, without looking at my notes, there was Gamergate, which has reared its ugly head just recently, by the way. Talk about flaming swords. We lost a jet and no one's ever found it. And no one knows why the pilot flew it to wherever the pilot flew it.
The Malaysia Airlines one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was Malaysia Airlines, was in 2014. Yeah. And like, that is still weird, right? Like, that's still like, what happened? And that was the shift in. So Gamergate is just really a symptom, right, of something bigger. But like, there's a whole shift in media in 2014, where all of a sudden the if you want to call it narrative control, I don't actually like this framing, but if I want to communicate with people, I guess I got to use it. The narrative control shifts onto the internet, and the internet becomes the big player in terms of moving news and politics. That didn't happen until 2014, but then it happened in 2014, like bang, like somebody flipped a switch, big time. And that's when everything flipped over. And that is also the rise of sort of the, what do you want to call it? The intellectual interests, right? Switched over in 2014 to online. Right. So the colleges have abandoned, we'll call them proper liberal arts for lack of a better term. Right. And that doesn't get taken up until 2014 on the internet. And then that builds and grows. And then you get Peterson right after that. Right.
Okay,
he's already on the internet.
I lost you there. So the colleges prior to 2014 have abandoned the liberal arts. We'll say those things that are proper to the study of free men, and we'll use freedom in the most expansive word to use.
Well, if you want to,
and also use that in the most expansive way.
Yeah, if you want to say it properly, I think they abandoned the Western canon.
Sure.
Right, that's probably the most proper way to think about it. Right, and then so the Western canon has been abandoned kind of for too long, right? Just
Mhm.
however long, I don't care where you start. It's
Mhm.
been years, and it's been
Mhm.
too many years.
Mhm.
And so that gets picked up on the internet.
And who's
And
doing
then,
that?
well, like one of the driving forces for this is this. So the internet's sort of bubbling underneath, right? And then, guys like Carl Benjamin, sorry, I got to have a cod, right? The whole Gamergate, the Gamergate bro group, right?
Mhm.
All of 4chan practically, right? Or all the people, we'll say, motivated enough to actually move 4chan, not the people consuming, because those are two different groups, but the people moving it, they're all rediscovering philosophy. They're rediscovering Western canon. They're rediscovering the
So it's
idea.
coming out from the fringe then,
Yes.
which is why it's hard to see, because
Right.
if anything in the world is fringe, it's 4chan.
Right. Right. And the thing is, guys like Carl Benjamin start to educate themselves for no apparent reason, right? I mean, he's not going to college or anything at this point, on that Western canon, and they're doing it online, and some of them are doing it together, right? You get the rediscovery of like Michael Sugrew's lectures, which were from the 90s, and all kinds of stuff gets dredged up that's maybe been on YouTube even for 10 years by that point, gets kind of dredged up, and you have this rise. Right, the TED Talks and all that are sort of, they're in that balanced state where they were useful. Are they still useful? Sort of thing, right? And weird other things have happened. Like the nature of the television has changed, right? Like History Channel stops having so much history and starts having so much ancient aliens.
We didn't get like B-29 bombers and here's all the pistols the Japanese used in World War II.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they ran out of content, most likely, is probably what, to be a little fair to them. But they just replaced it with fantasy, unfortunately, and that's not better. And so all that stuff was bubbling up, but in 2014 it really flips. And that flip is pretty big. And a bunch of weird little events happen at the same time.
So we could probably look at it more like it's a like things were super critical and then they flipped in 2014, because I hear people talking about 2008 with the financial crisis, and you've made the argument that it started earlier than that and nobody noticed with the overnight lending in the 90s. And probably farther back than that. So,
well, 2008 is just the savings and loan scandal again. Exact same scam. Same company, Countrywide, had a previous name and was bailed out of savings and loan, and moved counties to avoid the county guy in charge noticing. He wrote an article about it that I read a million years ago, probably back in 2011, when, but 2008, deliberately, they can't foreclose on all the houses they need to fix their problem. So they don't. They waited 3 years for my house. It wasn't until 2011 until they just decided for some reason they wanted my house. They weren't going to take any government money for it or anything else. They wanted that house. That was it. I dragged them out for 5 years to get it, but that was the best I could do.
And that was the one that was condemned by the time they got it, right?
They didn't fix it, man. I wasn't going to fix their roof. Yeah. No, they did not do well in that transaction. I was like, oh, you can do this. It's going to cost you though, because I know how to make that happen. And I sure as hell did. So by that point, I probably knew more real estate law than 90% of lawyers in Massachusetts. I had it all studied up. I had read like most of the case law and everything. Like people are like, you should be a lawyer. I'm like, I would shoot judges. There's no way. I can't abide by people pretending to follow rules and then just ignoring them. That doesn't fly with me at all. I go,
yeah. Shooting the judges would probably get you debarred.
Probably, maybe not. They might be like, you know what, that judge was a jerk. We're glad they're gone.
But don't do it again, young man.
Well, that's how lawyers talk to. See, this is the thing that bothers me. It's all a play, because that's how they talk when they're not in front of judges. They know which judges are good and bad, which other lawyers are good and bad, and they won't kick the bad lawyers out of their club. And I'm like, no, you need to do that. Like, these guys are bad. You need to kick them out. And when you don't do that, you deserve every bad thing somebody puts you in a bucket with other lawyers for, because you're not excluding them. You're keeping them in your bucket. Well, if they do a bad thing, you did it too. Sorry. Just the way it, that's the way it's going to be seen.
Oh boy, that probably applies to priests too, doesn't it?
Probably does. That might be 99% of my problem with Catholic Church since forever. Like I said, growing up in New England, you just, there's no way you didn't know somebody affected indirectly. There's no way.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way. It was so widespread, and just they just wrecks families, wrecks them. Yeah. It was too bad. And it, way before that, there was a scandal in Rhode Island that there was one female radio talk show host in Rhode Island who is railing on the priests sleeping with the wives of parishioners and stuff, and she got no stroke, and then she got eclipsed, and nobody did anything about that, as far as I know. I mean, they probably did, but like it didn't get the same press, obviously. So
yeah.
But you gotta have clear boundaries, and you've got to enforce those boundaries. And there's a lot of confusion around this. I know Cale Zeldin posted something on Twitter, and he was like, "Who guards the guards?" And I'm like, don't go down that road. First of all, the guards are not watchers, and the who watches the watchers problem is a well-known problem, and it's an infinite regress. Don't be thinking down those lines. You just have to get better people, and they have to be doing the right thing all the time, and that's hard.
Speaking of better people, here's Ted.
The best of us.
Ted?
You're going to get welcomed like that every time. You just need to smile about it. Oh,
everything's a letdown after that kind of introduction.
Not at all, Ted. Not with you, sir.
Here we go. Oh, man. What are you guys talking about besides scandal? That's what it sounded like.
We were talking about how 2014, the world ended. What were you doing in 2014?
What was I doing in 2014? I was hold on. Was that the year that I finished college? That was the year that I finished college. I was pretty convinced that the world was ending. Yeah. There was a weird thing that happened. Like, I think my mother and I were talking about that at one point, and we're just like, we just felt like we were on like the backside of a wave that had passed, and we weren't really sure what the wave was, but like something had happened. I mean, one of the things was starting to realize the enormity of the digital systems that we were creating. I want to say 2014 is right around when like we hit more than 50% of Americans owning smartphones or something. Like, it's much later than you would think. In my head, I'm like, I like retcon smartphones into my entire life, and it's totally not true. It's like a lot of most people didn't have smartphones even when I was in college. Yeah. Boy,
Maybe I got my first smart device in 2014.
You're the one who did it, Emma. You're the
I
one who
flipped
destroyed the world.
it.
You get on the
It
internet.
wasn't technically a smartphone because it was an iPod Touch, and it might have been the year before. I don't remember, but.
So I don't know if this counts because it's a year. It's like about a year after that. But when I was in Peru, I remember Pokemon Go. That was that super popular AR game. You guys remember that?
Yeah.
So there was
that
like a weekend
later.
That's 2015.
15? 15?
Yeah.
15
I
or
think it was
16.
16.
Yeah.
15 or 16.
I think it was 16 because I don't think it came out till we moved back to Michigan.
Okay, early 16. Yeah, that would have been spring. Yeah, northern, let's say like February or March of 16. And the Peruvian like telecom providers had like a weekend.
Yeah, because I was starting college.
Weekend thing where all the data on Pokemon Go is free. And I remember riding on a bus through the city, and you'd look out in the parks, and there's just like dozens of people like this, just like wandering aimlessly in the grass. And the fact that like I saw it flip overnight from no one's doing anything like that to like, on one bus ride, 200 to 300 people kind of just like, I felt like something had reached out from another world and was like doing this. It was deeply unnerving. Yes, pseudoboethius. I mean, you could like almost see the tendrils. It was weird. It was really weird. It so that was connected with another realization I had, which was, this is that was the heyday of like Facebook had just bought Oculus Rift, and they're like, we're gonna change the future of computing with VR and all this stuff. And whether or not that's gonna happen remains to be seen. But that was the first time I feel like I looked at someone like Mark Zuckerberg and realized like this man has acquired all of the resources he could possibly ever use for whatever he wants to do in life relating to himself. And yet he's like still convinced that he's going to like there's this drive. We got to get the other 3 billion people on this planet on Facebook. We got to get internet to everyone. We've got to have more of their life inside of this system. And realizing that like there is just a subset of people in the world that will acquire influence for the sake of influence. And that was when I realized that like we weren't going to be left alone. Like there's always the idea of like, yeah, there's going to be the people who just like ruin their lives and we get to go and like do our own thing. But I realized, no, there's like a subset of people that will always be trying to get a hold of you. Like always, not because you can make their life better, but because like the thing needs to grow. And so like, we've got to get, the Maasai Africans on Facebook. It's like, why does Facebook need more money? Does anyone at Facebook need more money? No, because it needs to get bigger, because it's been getting bigger and it needs to get bigger. That was like one of the most unsettling realizations I ever had as a young adult.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just, I'm trying to link it to one of the 7 deadly sins. Is it just regular old pride? I just building something that just keeps on getting bigger and bigger and more and more.
I think it's also a version of gluttony, because like just look like bigger numbers.
Yeah.
There's that great part in oh goodness, is it right at the beginning of the Return of the King, or the second book of the Return of the King, where Sam has this vision of becoming like Samwise the Great, and how he's like going to transform the plains of Gorgoroth into this flowing veil of beauty in paradise, and
because he's got the ring on him right now and he's being tempted to put it on.
And the thing that he's going to do is like restore Sauron's damage to the world in terms of like bringing back water and plants and flowers and all these things. And there's that great line where he says that like deep down it was something like it was his plain old hobbit sense that knew that one small garden was enough for him.
And his old gaffer just kind of in the back of his ear is like, Samwise, don't get above yourself.
Yes.
But that's contentedness, right? And everyone's aiming for happiness. And I'm like, no. The Stoics had it right. The Epicureans even had the same. Contentedness is what you go for. Happiness is a gift.
Yeah.
Well, ambition is not a virtue.
Right. Also true.
Father, I see those Thomist wheels turning in your head.
Yeah. unless it's holy ambition, but that would just be love of God. So
yes,
it wouldn't
ambition
be
in itself is not a virtue.
Yeah, no. If it's a desire for pleasure, power, fame, or money, and that's usually what ambition ends up being pointed towards, it's definitely not virtuous. And then doing great things for God usually is a result of humility.
Yes.
In fact, sorry, excuse me. Sorry, I misspoke. It's always a result of humility.
Yes, there we go.
Sorry about that. My bad on that.
I didn't want to jump in there and correct you, but
yeah, I get there eventually.
But the flip of that, at some point this winter, I think it was when there's that crazy like AI coup thing, open AI coup with Sam Altman and everything. Sam Altman was talking, someone was asking about like why he wanted to be the CEO of OpenAI, and he was basically like, I don't need any more money. Like I'm making more money than I know what to do with. What did he say? He said, we're going to be making some very weird decisions, and I want to be the one making them.
Yeah.
And you're like, there you go. Like there you have it. It's like it's a weird sort of honesty where it's like it's like, for those of you that are familiar with the Ransom trilogy, it's like Mark Studdick's whole thing about when he realizes that the National Institute for Coordinated Experiments is actually a political front for demons taking over the world, and it doesn't make him want to be part of it any less. He just wants to be on the inside. He doesn't care what it is. He just wants to be the one on the inside.
Oh,
Want to be in the room where it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, Father, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Lewis, there's that essay that he wrote, The Inner Circle, where he argues that the desire to be on the inside is like, for a large portion of humanity, is more fundamental than like any other desire. People will give up all sorts of other things to just be on the inside.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm trying to link this back
Now
to
it's-
2014 now.
Well, I got my list. So Ebola, Belgium becomes the first country to legalize euthanasia.
That was only in 14? Oh my goodness.
Michael Brown, that Ferguson case, Robin Williams suicide, like the domestic violence issue in the NFL became a thing all of a sudden. It's been there all along, right? And all of a sudden it's like a big deal. It's like, well, that's kind of weird. They go after Bill Cosby, which, I probably have heretical to the culture views on. That's why I phrased it that way. The Hong Kong protest for democracy.
Oh, is that one? I experienced that primarily through people like talking about Overwatch and something with Overwatch skins and the Hong Kong flag.
Right, because but see, I was talking about the crossover. So the crossover from mainstream media to the internet is the Hong Kong protests entirely. Right, that's when Twitter and all these like live videos from on the ground are telling a slightly different story, or maybe not so slightly different story from what the mainstream media is reporting. And so people start to shift where they're looking. Right.
And I wouldn't have picked this up because I was literally becoming an adult at the time. And these were like my first adult experiences of the world.
And also, by the way, you know what else happened in 2014 that crops up later is Crimea. So in other words, 2014 is the start of the Ukraine war that you've been ignoring all this time, until it cropped back up again and became unavoidable, right? Or unignorable or something. But it started in 2014, right? That's when it all started.
Wow.
Right. But like all of this stuff happens in the same year. And it's all super significant stuff.
And sorry, was that also the year that Trump came down the escalator?
Oh, that I don't know. There's a bunch of I have not yet begun to dig. This is just the stuff I went like, I have to add to this.
To explain to you how surreal all this is to me, I couldn't tell if Father Eric was making a joke there or not.
It's an important moment.
It is. We talked about it earlier. That was that was a apocalyptic moment.
It's an apocalyptic moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What happened with that?
Trump in the escalator?
Yeah, I've never heard of this.
He was announcing he was running for president.
Yeah, that was
okay.
That was 2015, Don's telling us, and I think that's right, because that's about when kings go off to campaign.
It was how he did it, and all, like it was just a very unusual way to go about that whole thing.
But it wasn't long after that people started.
First time I voted.
Yeah.
Was that primary? That was the first time I voted. I just turned 18 like months before.
Yeah, that might have been.
You're like an apocalypse baby.
Yay! Things I never wanted.
I mean, there's all sorts of weird stuff when you think about like even say like America is a superpower that we're the end of the world. Like America is the end of the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's all sorts of there. Yeah, I don't know. There's like I think there's been like a deep sense of, and I'm not saying that it's wrong or anything like that. There's been a deep sense of this sort of apocalyptic reality, at least since the Great Wars. I mean, if you go, well, interesting that 2014 was such a pivotal year because 1914 was also.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the World War I was also like.
That was the death of the old world.
It was the death of the old world. Yeah, it really did die.
But it got set up in 1914.
Yeah.
Everything that happens pretty much 5 years later was set up 5 years prior.
Yeah, well, and that is the thing about 2014.
Yep.
You had no idea what was going on at the time, right? Because things are mostly starting.
Some of us saw it. but yeah, no, we were talking about that earlier. Like, people didn't sense it until 16, 18, 19, right? Then it becomes like the fact of the change becomes unavoidable in 2020, right? Like, oh, all these systems are completely broken, and here's the evidence, right? Like, what happens in 2020 just shows you nothing that you thought was working had been working for a long time. And that's why people kept trying to go, no, we just need to fix this one thing. And it's like, no, dude, you are not going to go into the universities and fix one thing. That ship sailed a long time ago.
Well, and this is connected to the notion of, I actually had a great conversation with my brother about this yesterday, about like the whole cut flower culture notion, and then like tradition. We're talking about tradition. It's like, what did he say? What did my brother call it? Tradition is the way to make decisions if you don't want to think. And he was being a little tongue in cheek, but it's great because what does tradition do? It basically aggregates all of the good heuristics that everyone before you has used and says, like, here it is. Like, you don't have to know what the heuristics are. You don't have to evaluate it. Time has done that for you.
Right.
And so then when you start talking about these really complex things, like the way that societies hold together, none of those things play out on a year time scale or a 5-year time scale or a 50-year time scale. So, Mark, if you take it from a systems perspective of, oh, I can look at the system and evaluate the thing that's broken and fix the thing, and now the system is going to be fixed.
Yep.
Like, fundamentally, you can't do that because you actually just don't get feedback fast enough. There's no way to match, did that work, to how things are changing.
Right.
Which is like, again, why traditionalism just like has to be your baseline way of approaching reality, because we're not big enough. We're just not big enough to make decisions and distinctions like that.
Well, we don't live long enough to see patterns that are longer than a generation unfold, right?
Bang.
And what is tradition? Tradition, effectively, to use fancy Vervaeke terms that are very useful, is distributed cognition over time.
Yes. With which my brother was pointing this out, and I hadn't made this distinction before, but it's so great because tradition is not, you're like, okay, I'm going to look at 100 people and see what they're doing and make a decision based on that. Looking at 100 people around me is not even close to the same thing as looking 100 people backwards.
Yep.
Right? Looking sideways is not the same as looking back.
Exactly.
And we do that all the time. We're like, well, we're going to look at what other people are doing. Fine, we're social beings. The world is complex. We should look at what other people do. But to look at across at all these, say, ways of living that we've picked up in the last 5 years or the last 6 months or whatever, and think, hey, look, 1,000 people are doing it, therefore it's fine, is just completely wrong. Now, if you can go 1,000 people back, 1,000 generations back, and they're all doing it, maybe you're onto something.
There you've got something.
But that's the deep confusion with scaling, which, Navigating Patterns has a video on that, of course. But there's a difference between scaling out and scaling up, it's called. But it should be scaling back, because backwards in time, right? And there are trade-offs and advantages to each. But this move towards decentralization, and I don't think you're on Twitter. Father Eric, he's not on Twitter. I tweeted out the other day, very cheekily, of course, because I was being nice, actually. What if Protestantism is just cryptocurrency for religion? Because you can drop the what if on that. Because effectively, all you're doing is decentralizing religion. That's all you're doing. And you see the decentralization movement everywhere. But with decentralization is a flattening and a spreading out across. That's all it is.
Mark,
So
I'm
it's
just cracking
horizontal
up now
Hey,
scaling.
Mark, you brought it back to the title rant.
because now all I can think about is all of the Baptist designations as being splits in different Bitcoin lineages.
Yep. Right.
There was this.
Hear ye, hear ye. Martin Luther is the first cryptobro.
Yes. I love it.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, there was someone at Chino. I wish I could remember who it was. I think it was Doug. What is his last name? Doug Weston. We're on the bus back from touring that Orthodox church, and he told this long joke about this guy who like comes across someone who's going to jump off the bridge. He's like, a bridge. He's like, no, I'm sure you have so much to live for. Are you a Christian? Yes, I'm a Christian. Oh, are you a Baptist? Yes, I'm a Baptist. Are you a Baptist before, after this after this? And then, it goes on for like 10 different distinctions. And finally the guy on the bridge is like, no, I'm the other thing. And he just pushes him off.
Die, heretic. Yeah, I've
Yeah,
heard that one.
exactly. Yeah. It's like, it's nice when you have a person that provides unity so that you don't have to split hairs over those things. Isn't that right, Father?
Did you watch the beginning of the stream? Because you just
No.
recapitulated how it began. Well done.
No, I put the kids to bed and then I just hop on and just jump into the river.
That was the opening of the three affordances.
Three reasons why you should have a pope. That was the opening rant.
Yes, well, I guess I'm just like Catholic or something. I don't know.
It's almost like we're participating in the same pattern on different levels.
And it always leads to the same place reliably and consistently. Weird.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't that give you comfort if you were within a hierarchy that gave that to you so that you didn't have to try to think about it because you could just follow the tradition and it would lead you independently to the right place? That'd be nice.
This was horrifying for Colin to find out initially. But one of my favorite things about being Catholic is that some things are just above my pay grade.
Right. Well, it's a huge relief when you can fit in the hierarchy. And in many ways, when Jordan Peterson says hierarchy is inevitable and all that, what he's really fighting back against, although I'm almost positive he doesn't realize it, is the decentralization and the spreading out and the flattening. Right? You're saying, no, this isn't going to go away.
Do you see decentralization and subsidiarity as being different? Or
what on God's green earth is subsidiarity?
So the principle of subsidiarity, are you actually asking?
Yeah, I have no idea what that word
Principle of
actually means.
subsidiarity is a principle of Catholic social teaching whereby basically if a problem can be solved at a certain level, it ought to be solved at that level. And higher levels should not interfere with that.
You've explained that to me before. Yeah, well, subsidiarity is underpinned by hierarchy, right? And I think that this is sort of my argument for why y'all aren't doing the right thing and are misunderstanding Peterson. The thing that got undermined is not all of these interim things. It's the underpinning of all of them, which is hierarchy itself, right? So one of the ruses that we'll say the socialists play, because this is socialism, it's the same trick, right? Is they say you have been wronged and that was wrong. Okay, now you can say that about anybody, about any number of things in their lives, right? So that's a universal, like everybody gets wronged, right? Like the world is going to betray you so many times in so many unexpected ways. Sorry. It's almost like it's a fallen world or something. I know my friend Bruce will be very upset to hear that. But what I'm sure the rest of you are shocked too. Catholics in particular will be shocked to hear we live in a fallen world. But what they do is they weaponize that, turn it into an emotion and get you like emotional about something. And I can go into an example from like today if you want later. But and then they say that's why you must flatten things down. That's why you must get rid of these things. That's why the managers shouldn't make more money than the workers. The owners should make more money than the workers. Right? Everybody should be equal, because effectively then there will be nobody there to wrong you. right? But of course, that just ignores the fact that we live in a fallen world. We're not just fallen people, like, which we're also not getting around, by the way. And so it just collapses everything down, right? But when you collapse things down, the idea of subsidiarity doesn't even make any sense at that point.
Okay, so let's see if we can properly distinguish subsidiarity from decentralization and see if they are in fact distinct points. Subsidiarity, the idea of subsidiarity is that there is a proper hierarchy that everything ought to find its place in, and that every different level would be participating in the same thing according to its own level.
Right.
Whereas decentralization would say, no, we can't have hierarchy, right? Because hierarchy is dangerous. Somebody who's higher up than you might hurt you. And that's in fact true. But so instead of having every level attend to its proper place, we're just going to scatter everything out and flatten it so that nobody can get to be higher than that. And so Pseudo Be Atheist has been putting a lot of comments over there, and I think he's confusing decentralization and subsidiarity. They're distinct, but subsidiarity relies on this idea of there being actually a high, whereas the way you're using decentralization is a flattening maneuver.
It is a flattening maneuver, right? And in fact, decentralization doesn't work for anything ever at any scale. And that's what people don't understand, right? When you make things equal, you make them the same, and then you can't differentiate them, and then everybody steals your money. So, for example, the U.S. is not, I mean, technically, I've experienced it, technically, right? The U.S. is based on subsidiarity, not decentralization.
Yeah.
And I know that's
exactly
really
right.
confusing.
So
it's the hierarchy of federal government, local government, and a separate hierarchy for the church.
Yes. First off, Mark, I love the noting that you actually can't have subsidiarity without a hierarchy. And I think this is the reason that when you move out of a hierarchy, the two poles that you're moving to simultaneously are totalitarianism and anarchy, right?
Yep.
So anarchy, no one's in charge. Totalitarianism, whether it's a person or a government or whatever, is in charge of everything, always, everywhere. So it's like, you don't get to decide how you run your family, Ted, because you're not to have a hierarchy of government, head of household, children. The government decides how the children are raised, because we've got to consolidate that, because we can't trust you to play your part in it. So, there's so much there. But yeah, we had this exact situation where we had this weird political situation. We were trying to keep a casino out of our community because outside interests had come in and just run around us and got it in our state constitution that our county had to have a casino in it. So we went out to try to get another constitutional amendment to our state constitution that would then allow us to at least vote on it and on whether or not we wanted to have one. It was really funny because I was out on the street canvassing for this, and I ran to this guy. He's like, "Oh, that sounds like subsidiarity." I was like, "Oh, you must be Catholic." He's like, "I am." I was like, "Great, you understand exactly what we're doing here."
Right. Well, and that's the interesting thing, right? Is that there's three groups. If you want to talk culture war or whatever, there's still three groups, right? There's the people who want anarchy. Explicitly, it's not, no, Antifa's not hiding the ball, right? There's the people that want tyranny, and sometimes they pretend to be the same group, right? There's people in the anarchy group who are clearly tyrannical, right? Because the tyranny doesn't go away. But the tyranny and the anarchy are not balanced, because there's nothing there to hold them together. There's no hierarchy to put them in right relationship with one another, because you can't get around either of them, right? And so they just run at the extremes, all the time. You have to pick one or the other at any given time.
So this is fascinating. Now, I really am not here to rag on Protestants and Protestantism, and I hope that doesn't come across. But it was, as you move out away from having, right, there's the mainline denominations in the Anglican Church. There are these Protestant church ecclesiastical structures that have something like a hierarchy. But as you get further out into that, you get this weird bifurcation where you have this sort of non-denominational house church splinter things where it's here's 20 people, we've got our Bible, and we're just going to look at this and see what we think it says. And then on the other side, you have these basically like franchise model things where you've got one hyper charismatic leader who has 10,000 people attending his churches and like 16 satellite campuses where they're all beaming the service that these people are putting on in one. And so instead of being like, there's all this like difference, it's actually, we've completely flattened it, right? Because it's not like you've got different pastors doing the same worship service, like all these priests are doing the same mass. Now it's like, no, we have to do a photo reproduction, we have to do a video reproduction, we have to stream this guy.
We need it done in 8K.
And we need it in 8K. Make sure the makeup artist has got his face right.
Necessarily can't like target the community as well because it's going to too many different communities.
Right, and he just doesn't have enough attention. Like that one guy doesn't have enough attention. And so if you don't allow for these mediating levels, like say between Rome all the way down through the bishops into the priests into the parishes, then it's like, well, you just that connection can't happen, which is weird because bureaucracy actually was supposed to be that mediating level.
Yep.
That's what people hate on bureaucracy. That's what bureaucracy is supposed to be for. It just
protection from tyranny. Amazing.
Yes.
It protects you from above. But like, again, the thing about hierarchy, we talk about this all the time on my Discord server, by the way, it's a big topic. Like when you're in a structure, you can specialize now. When you're trying to specialize outside of a structure, you actually can't do it well. You get distracted by all the other things that it's sort of like running a business. So I've how many are we up to? 14 failed businesses now. So I'm doing good. Soon I'll make all the mistakes, and then I'll run out of mistakes to make. So when you try to run a business, there's probably 12 core skills that you need.
Yeah.
Right. Unfortunately, even if you have them all, and I've met people who probably do, I'm not going to claim I do. 14 and counting. Not looking good. Right. They don't have the time and energy to do them quickly enough. Even if they could do them well enough, which of course, the more things you're trying to do at once, the worse that it gets past a certain point. You don't know what that point is for you, by the way. No one ever does, right? So you need other people to tell you. So even if you could do that, you'd need somebody else, right? And so you automatically start setting up hierarchies. The minute you try to do anything, because you need people to watch you and improve you. You need something outside of yourself to measure against. That's automatically a hierarchy. And then when you don't take the hierarchy seriously, you get things. A lot of people don't know this. I bet you don't know this, Ted. Bitcoin has original Bitcoin Satoshi Nakamoto protocol has already split a long time ago. And so if you have a Bitcoin older than a certain date, it still works on the new network, but the old network's technically still producing coins, but they're split off from the other Bitcoins, and they're all called Bitcoin.
I did not know that.
And all the other cryptos have that problem, except for a handful. The handful that don't have that problem are actually run by corporations. They might be nonprofit corporations, but they're all run by corporations. Every single one of them.
But to go back to, I mean, some of the stuff you're saying there, Mark, in terms of you can't specialize if you're not in a structure. I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is families, right? And so Father was in his homily this morning was saying, tracing the line between Aristotle and St. Thomas, saying that the basic unit of human life is the family, not the individual. And, especially as you start, if a marriage produces children, by God's grace, then you end up with this immediate situation where you're like, okay, we've got an outward facing and an inward facing. And this is true even when you don't have children. Like, you need to take care of the house and you need to also manage your relationships with the outside world. And what you find out really quickly is that, like, even if you're not, say, arranging yourself husband and wife in a way that corresponds with people's traditional views of how those things should be done, if you're not saying, you've got X and I trust that you have X, so I'm not going to think about X, boy, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And so, but if you're inside of that structure and you know who's making the decisions for that area and who's following in that area, and I'm trying to make this as high level as possible without getting in, all of a sudden things can actually happen. Because if I'm trying to manage a household by myself and another person and their interactions in that household and their interactions with the world outside, it's like, boy, that's not going to happen. And so it's that capacity to exist with it, to submit to that structure. Really is what you're doing. You're submitting to it. You're giving yourself up to it. And then all of a sudden it works because you have the humility to trust someone else, to not be because you don't have pride, right? And so you're not trying to make the whole thing bend around yourself.
Right.
And humility is the pathway to all the virtues. There we go. You can mark that one on your bingo card.
Yeah, well, it allows you to. Humility is the thing that allows you to trust other people.
Yeah.
You're paranoid. That's because you don't have humility. You know, you don't trust. You don't know how to trust people. That's because you don't have humility. Like it's required.
Yeah. Well, humility, yes, and humility. Weirdly, humility is actually related to the capacity to suffer, I think, which is interesting. I mean, Mark, this connects back to your socialism thing, which is that like when you say like I shouldn't be the one to suffer, it's like, well, why? Why shouldn't I be the one to suffer ever? It's like, what is it? We had a wedding in our parish yesterday. It was the first Catholic wedding I'd been to. It was great, and Father had a great homily on it. So this, for those who are listening, this is not Father Eric. This is my father here local, my past priest here.
I'm
local.
sure I'd like him.
You would really like him, Father Eric, and he would like you. But he was talking about marriage. Well, first of all, really, it's like putting this together, right? So the bride and the groom come up, and they're right there in front of the altar, rail, and they're like incensed and all this stuff, and they're there for they do the wedding ceremony, and then they just go straight into into the priest offers a mass, and the now husband and wife are there, and you're like, oh, okay, they're being offered up, like the two of them together in their marriage are like they're being offered up as a sacrifice to God right now. And Father brought this up, which one of the things that he said that was really interesting was he's like, there's two sacraments today, the Blessed Sacrament of the Eucharist and the Sacrament of Holy Matrimony. He's like, I am administering the sacrament of communion to everyone here, but this couple, they're the ones who are administering the sacrament of Holy Matrimony to each other.
Oh,
so
nice.
So then what he said, so that he was talking about this whole notion of it as of marriage as a sacrifice not necessarily in the sense of you're going to suffer, but you're giving up. And it's just this one little thing he said, love is what makes sacrifice possible, and perfect love is what makes sacrifice a joy.
Ooh.
Oh, wow.
I like that.
I
don't like the L word, but because it's a hard one. But yes, also yes.
Yeah. So that one's been sticking with me, and I'm just thinking about that in terms of humility. And it's like, what is it that humility and love being the things that come together that let you be able to sacrifice, which also lets you suffer, which, Mark, if you can't suffer, you'll be a sucker.
Yeah.
People will control you. There's a great Khalil Gibran, I think I've brought this up on the live stream before, Khalil Gibran poem where he talks about the pursuit of comfort and like how comfort like sticks its meat hooks into you until you're nothing but a puppet for comfort.
Yeah. Well, I think it's worse, Kat. I think technically what actually ends up happening to people is when they don't have humility, they don't know what trust is, and therefore they don't know how to determine who to trust. And because you live in a world with other people, you end up having to trust people, right?
Yes.
And so you end up trusting these people, and they have control of you. And the thing that happens is that you never blame the person who has control of you for the things you get angry and resentful about. And you also never blame yourself because you have no humility. And so you always blame other people. And yet, so that's just pure psychological projection. I feel this way. It must be your fault. It actually happened to me earlier today on my Discord server. And I was just like, this is so fascinating. I'm always surprised. It happens all the time. I'm always surprised every time it happens. Every single time I'm equally surprised. I'm like, how do people get there?
This is a weird connection, but that's what you see when people complain about Dave Ramsey.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
When people complain about Dave Ramsey and his financial advice, it's always the like, no, I'm leveraging my debt and like I shouldn't have to put things off to pay things, to go without to pay things down. And like, it's not that you're like a slave to the person who lent you money. Like you see this all over the internet when people are complaining about that sort of thing.
Or they blame the giant psychic space dragon of capitalism. See, navigating patterns.
Yeah. Or like,
Is there a
I'm
psychic
just
space
tricked
dragon
into
in the
it. Why
room with
should
you,
I have to
Margaret?
suffer now? The
Right.
government
Right
should
there
just
behind him.
like forgive it all.
Yeah.
So, Mark, putting it in those terms are really interesting because, like, thinking about the virtue of faith, there's a way in which faith is a virtue, and it's a supernatural virtue, right? That gives us the capacity to believe truths that come from authority, that come from places that we can't see, right? So things that are outside of, say, our immediate sense perception. But there's another way in which faith is just a baseline aspect of cognition and of operating in the world, right? I trust that laws of physics are going to keep going. I trust that, language is happening between people, right? Because there are, we went through that whole philosophy thing where we doubted that, words didn't signify the same thing to people. And so communication is real, right? There's this sort of like baseline faith, and then there's supernatural faith, which is a much more conscious thing, right? So that sort of the virtue of faith it's an act of the will. I like that, and that there's trust existing on at least two levels. One is the trust that just has to happen. Like you literally won't move if you don't trust. Yep. You will starve, you'll stop breathing, all of these things. So now, is that trust consciously directed in any way? Well, it doesn't, not necessarily. And that's what you're saying. So it's not so much that humility gives you the capacity to trust, because you're going to trust no matter what. It's that humility gives you the capacity to consciously enter into trust. And once you've done that, then you can actually have discernment in who and what you're putting trust in.
It gives you the discernment, right?
Yeah. It gives you the capacity to start making you right. And then you can also evaluate, well, why did trust break? On what level too, right? If you can make these levels, and this actually goes all the way back to the whole issue, say, of scandal in the Catholic Church. What am I placing my trust in? Am I placing my trust in the local priest? Am I placing my trust in the bishop? Am I placing my trust in God's church in this, that he instituted through Christ? Those are all three of those are very different things, right? And if you can't distinguish them, and because humility is sight, ultimately humility is sight, and that's why humility is connected to things like trust and faith, because humility is the capacity to see things as they are, not as you want them to be.
Right, and it's contrast too, right? Because humility is the contrast between your imagination or your fantasy or your imaginal realm and reality, right? Because I know how things are going to work out in my head, and oddly, it works for you. They're always perfect in my head. Everything works perfectly in my head. It's great. It doesn't happen that way almost ever. Every once in a while,
Mark, I have this
real lucky.
I have this product that I can sell you where your sense perception will always align with what's going on in your imagination. How does that sound? Can I take all of your money now?
Yes. Yes.
Oh. Get thee behind me, Ted.
Yeah. That's what's on the table. If anyone's wondering, that's one of the things that's on the table is we'll put you in a place where your sense perception will always line up with your imagination. Yep. Yeah, that's about half of it right there, Mark.
It'll be great.
You'll have your God goggles on.
Ooh, I like that term, the God goggles. Yeah. Yeah. And that's where all the projection comes from. Like people who are paranoid, it's so funny because this happened again. It happened today, right? You said this and you said this, and I'm just looking at them like, I literally asked you a question. I don't know what you're saying. I said things, just kind of asked you a question. It's the paranoid person, and I'm like, you used that word, not me. I didn't come up with that. I didn't come up with the word paranoid. I don't know why you used it. Right? Very insightful though. Like you're handing me your whole psychology, by the way. I didn't want it, Emma, but there it is.
Emma, do you know what the etymology of paranoid is?
I'm not sure. Para means a lot of things.
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
Let's look it up.
I'm using my distributed cognition now.
Well, that's the thing the internet is good at, distributing cognition. Unfortunately, distributed cognition is not a good, because it's easy to go down the dark rabbit hole of 4chan and get enchanted by that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. Yeah, Paul Kingsnorth's got this little short story where he talks about the internet as being
it is
psychic antenna that just picks things up.
That's interesting.
Paranoia.
So paranoia, it's a Greek word, and it just means like madness. But it literally means to be out of your mind. Para is like outside of, standing beside. Nous,
And Noia.
mind.
News.
Oh, fascinating.
Oh, it's straight
So I
from
was
the
gonna-
Greek then. Okay.
I was
That makes
It's
gonna bring
sense.
straight from
something
the
up.
Greek.
With that, Mark, there's this classic part in G.K. Chesterton's Orthodoxy where he talks about lunacy. And he goes on to make all these wonderful puns from the English notion of lunacy connecting to the moon. But where he talks about most, I don't know if he says all or most. I mean, Chesterton paints with a very wide brush, so he probably says all, but he talks about madness not as being a lack of logic, but too much logic. And so
Yep.
for the man who is a lunatic, what he does is everything fits in the logical framework that he has. He's like, when you talk to a man who says he's being followed, like everything fits into the schema of I'm being tracked by shady government agents. Like
Yep.
everything is explained by that. He says the
Yep.
problem isn't that they see too much, it's that they see too little, and nothing
Right.
is breaking this like really tight logical frame that they
Right.
have for the things in their life.
Well, you have to do that. I mean, this is why people get into this flat world idea, because if you've been told you can understand the world, you will imagine a world that you can understand, and that will always be a conspiracy
Ooh.
or some set of conspiracies, right?
Yes.
And that's
yes.
like literally what happens because you've been sold a lie that you are a rational creature and you can know or worse yet, understand the world or even just a piece of the world, which you can't even understand a piece of the world. Not possible.
Which I will go back to the distinction between the Catholic notion of mystery and the scientific notion of mystery. Like this is so dang fundamental. Well, actually, let me restate that. Technically, it is damn fundamental. Technically.
Yes. Yes.
Where one of them is a thing that is so true that you never plumb the depths of it and brings forth continual understanding. The other one is a thing that once you have solved it, you have fully encompassed it and you can move on to the next thing. And if you live in a world full of this kinds of mystery, one, you get bored really easily. And two, you know where you end up? You end up like cutting up live animals and experimenting on children because you just run out of things to look at because you
Right.
solved the mysteries.
But that's a video game, what you just described.
Yes. Yeah.
And you
Yes.
notice people are saying this is an NPC, this is a deliberate attempt to shadow government. This, right?
Mhm.
They're talking about the world as though it's a video game. And in 2014 is what? It's the emergence of the people who were online in video games, Gamergate, into the regular sphere of the rest of us, right? It's their integration
And it's
into the world at large.
and it's a generation of people who grew up on video games coming into adulthood.
And this is one of those rare moments in history because this almost never happens. It's interesting too because Sargon of Akkad's the one, or Carl Benjamin pointed this out in one of his recent videos because he's resurrected his channel because of Gamergate 2.0. But he said historically, no one thought in terms of generations. It's just not even a consideration in the past. But this is like the 2014, the 2000s, whatever. Somewhere in there is a concurrence of technological change, cultural change, and generational switch all at the same time. That definitely happened. It probably was 2014, although that gets a lot murkier. But yeah, that's unusual. It's an unusual thing in history. Nobody in the past thought in terms of generations.
Mark, to clarify, you mean generations as being like people born in like a 15 to 20 year period being distinct, not like the generations of Abraham are, right? Because people thought but they didn't think of them as being these like distinct like brackets
Basically,
of people.
The generations of Abraham were like everything was great and it started going downhill.
Right, but
There's always a golden narrative with those ones.
That
It's actually
recent,
how it works. So,
but that recent idea, Ted, of generations is all about, well, we all grew up in the same time period, exposed to the same TV, roughly speaking, and therefore, and that's absurd. But it did happen with gaming. It didn't happen with TV at all.
That's actually connected. You can only have that notion of generation if everyone's looking sideways and no one is looking back. Right.
And if you're looking at a flat world, you will think that's how the world is because you won't be able to look back.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Holy
gonna get
mackerel,
off and read
guys.
Moby Dick because Father Eric is about to shut this live stream down, and I'm gonna go
That's
read
right.
some crazy old stuff from like 150 years ago.
Yeah, well, hey, Moby Dick is a great novel, and everybody who can manage should read it. And if you
Hey,
don't like
there's
it,
this
I get it.
there's this wacky old book from like 2,000 years ago you should read too.
Hey, there we go.
What's the
Hey,
name?
Casey,
I
there's
can never
his
remember the
words.
name. No author, short name, hard to remember.
Oh
No,
gosh, but it's easy to remember that at
I don't know.
9:30 I start getting ready for bed. So,
Yep.
good night, all of you. This one was a real banger, and God bless you all.
Good night.
Good night.